Hi everyone. As we all know, Indian mythology is a rich tradition of stories about deities and mythological characters. Today, we are meeting an author who has written mythological fiction and fantasy, and today we are going to talk about his journey of writing his book, A Song of Trinity. So, let's talk. Hello sir, welcome to the Book Talks by Jashn.
Thank you for having me here.
Sir, can you please tell our audience about yourself?
I'm an author. First and foremost, I started writing books when I was 13 years old. I'm also a lawyer because I studied law. I'm working in one of the big four in a senior position as a professional. On the professional front as a lawyer. I have written books because I love writing books, and I love writing books because I started off by falling in love with books and reading books. So to me, the writing part of it is something that I really enjoy doing, and as much as I enjoy reading books, my particular genre of writing books is typically thrillers, fantasy thrillers based on Indian mythology, or sometimes I take up social issues and write thrillers about them. So I have written thrillers about ancient Indian temples. I have written thrillers based on a mixture of Vedic knowledge and quantum physics. I've written books based on vigilantism and corruption. Basically, I love thrillers. I love to read thrillers, and I like to write books that I would have loved to read.
Great, sir. And my next question was that only. Usually, what I believe is the writers usually inspire from their surroundings or whatever they see or whatever they read. So you already said that you love to write. What kind of readings you read?
Yeah.
So, sir, what is your favorite genre, like in writing?
Fantasy fiction, thankfully, what happens is that in India, we are blessed with a fantastic amount of mythological, stories and information. This is one of the, I think, the only cultural center in the world where mythology dovetails into science.
Yes.
Most of our mythology is actually based on science, which the world is only now coming to recognize. For example, if you take the Dasavatar of Vishnu, it is stripped of all its stories and righteousness and etc. and so forth. It is nothing more than the story of evolution from fish to man. So basically, if you look at any Indian mythological tale, there is a morality involved in it, and there is knowledge involved in it, and there is a lot of science involved in it. And because we are put in such a position today that we are able to understand both the science and the morality part of the ancient knowledge that we have, we are put in a position where we are able to actually bring this out to the world. And I consider myself very lucky that I'm been able to write on this subject. Typically to the Gen X, which for some reason or the other have kind of, two things. One, they don't have touch with the cultural heritage of India, and two, they want to get in touch with the cultural heritage of India. So this works as a medium for that as well.
Very true, sir, and thanks to the writers like you, those who are bringing such topics for our new generation especially. Sir, I will not ask you that which one is your favorite book.
They're all my children.
Yes, sir, because we believe that they are kind of babies for a writer. So, sir, tell us about this book, Song of the Trinity, The Rise of Kali.
Okay, so this book has a very a very unique beginning. This book started off when my kids were little kids, and they wanted to hear, superhero stories. And then my son came up to me and said, "Listen, I don't want to hear about Superman, Batman. There are comics. I want to know about Indian superheroes." So then I was wondering where I would go and get Indian superheroes from, and that's when the stories of all these great warriors that we have came into being. And to me, the greatest of these warriors at any point of time, if you look at it, is Ashwatthama, son of Drona. He is mostly depicted in the epic Mahabharata as a villain, or as a man who has no fixed position in life, or a man whose loyalties keeps drifting back and forth, etc. and so forth. But everything about Ashwatthama is a mystery. And therefore I thought I'll create a character, Ashwatthama, in the present time and age, because he's one of the 7 or 9 immortals, depending on which epic you're reading. So therefore I started creating that stories about him, etc. and so forth. And well, it went on and on until my children grew up, and they went their ways. And today my daughter settled down in Australia, and my sons settled down in Chennai. And I found myself very alone at one point of time. And I said, okay, then what am I going to do with my stories? And then I started writing the book. And the first copy of this book that I wrote, which my wife was forced to read, was almost about 1,000 pages, and no publishing house would actually had publishing houses saying, sorry, you're a first time author, we can't take a book this big from you. So then I had to break it up, I had to do what I had to do. And the first of these books came out as Shatru in the year 2015, which is actually the beginning of the story. So this is a story based on our Puranas, which could include the Kalki Purana, the Garuda Purana, and speaking of Garuda Purana, that's a Purana in which all the 21,000 hells are described. And in each of these 21,000 hells, all the punishments are described for each and every sin committed by man. There's not one hell. Narak, 21,000 layers. So then actually I started looking at it and I started thinking, wow, if you remove everything from this book, Garuda Puran, it is nothing more than a list of all the sins that a human being can do. Punishment को एक साइड में रखते हैं, लेकिन these are all the sins that a human being can do. 21,000 hells it can fill up. So it's all documented right there. So basically all of these Purans have come together. There is Rigveda in this book. There are some parts of the Upanishads which have been brought into this book. So it's not just a book about, and there are a number of these books which are written on Ramayana, Mahabharat. This has nothing to do with it. This is a book based on a lot of other stories. There are also stories which describe the supreme villain or supreme evil of Hindu mythology, and that's called, that's a scripture of a sect called Ayyavadi, which is in the borders of Tamil Nadu and Kerala. Right? Now these are all very obscure sects or subsects of Hinduism, and their literature is also something that I came across and I read and I was astounded by it. So all of those have formed together to form a story called the Song of the Trinity. Right? And Rise of the Kali is the first part of it. So Shatru is a prequel. Actually what happens before the beginning is Shatru. Song of the Trinity, the Rise of Kali, is about the rise of Kali, who is the king of Kali Yuga. It's not Mother Kali. It's Kali, the king of Kali Yuga, who is about to enter this Kali Yuga and destroy the universe as we know it. And because the gods are fighting each other, there's only a band of warriors who can stand against him right now until the gods settle their disputes. And all of them come to stop Kali. And even if it is possible to stop. And these band of warriors are incredible soldiers, incredible warriors. brave, and they sacrifice a lot. And this story is the story of their saga, and if they can or can they stop Kali? Who can destroy an enemy just by looking at him? So on the one side you have a supreme villain, and on the other side you have a band of extraordinary warriors, but limited powers. What's going to happen? So that's the background of the book. I think I spoke too much about it.
Still, you
she agrees.
Yeah, no, but again, I was loving it, so I didn't stop you. I was confused about this title, The Rise of Kali. Actually, I was, I was thinking if it's Kali or if it's Kali, what it is. So thank you so much for giving this much description about this, and I would like to tell the audience, this is the book, this is documentation of so many Puranas, as sir already said that, and in this little book we can know a lot more about our culture, our Puranas and our Vedas and all that.
And all of them are steeped in, for example, I gave you an example of even the Garuda Purana, which describes the hells and describes the punishments for each crime. But ultimately, if you look at it, it is just a list of all the things that we are capable of doing, all the bad that we as a species are capable of doing. It's not a book on Indian mythology, it's a story, it's a fast-paced story. It's got a lot of action in it, right? But it's also got a few messages, which I think will be very interesting for readers of that bent of mind who would like to read those books.
What I understood is it's not just a book, or it's not a kind of story, but it's whatever you have written is by a great research. It's not you just wrote it by hearing something or reading.
Just to give you an example, I mean, Shatru came out in 2015, and Song of the Trinity came out in 2023. So there's an 8-year gap between the two books. And the 8-year gap between the two books is for a reason. That there was a lot of research that went into the book, which means that the next part of this book is not going to come 8 years later. That draft is already ready. That 8 years went into investing in the entire series. That's what I meant to say.
True. That's really very nice, and we must be, after reading this, I'm sure that reader must be waiting for the next part.
Well, I hope so. That's the whole point.
Sir, as you talked about, like you read a lot. What kind of reading usually you read? These kind of reading is something, you need a time, you need some time, you need patience also while reading. So, is this the same, genre you keep on reading?
So, I just don't read Indian mythology. Yes. I read fantasy.
Okay.
And I also read a lot of thrillers. For example, I picked up a couple of books from the other Kung Fu shop by Lee Child. He's one of my favorite authors. And the reason I like Lee Child is because of his very, very beautiful way of writing. His writing style is very, very original, very raw, very hard-hitting. So I love to read authors who write differently, right?
Would you like to suggest such kind of reads to?
Of course. I mean, if you're readers of fantasy, there's a new writer on the blog, the international writer called J. Christoph. He's written a book called The Empire of the Vampire. It might sound a little funny, but the writing style of this author was so good. It was so brilliantly written. The presentation of the book was so wonderful that I did not leave out a single word or a comma or a full stop when I read the book. And it's a thick, big book. It was brilliant, constant. The pace was unrelenting. So J. Christoph is a great author, of course. Lee Child, the all-time favorite of mine, and the man whose book I read and I thought of becoming an author, Robert Ludlum. He's one of the greatest of the thriller writers in the world.
Thank you so much for these beautiful suggestions, sir. Like we have a lot to talk, but still we have to finish somewhere. So please give a message to the readers or the audience who are watching.
See, every society, whether it is an old society or the new gen society, the X-gen society, whichever society you're looking at, are societies that have grown and flourished because of knowledge. Right? Knowledge can come from anywhere. But history has taught us that the best way to acquire knowledge and to preserve knowledge is with books. Right? So books may take different trends depending on the age in which they are written. So you might find Charles Dickens maybe boring, maybe not. You might find Agatha Christie or Arthur Conan Doyle boring or not. But you can find the new gen authors who are interesting to you. So read. And people have something to say, hear what they have to say. The best way to know is to read. And I also said books are the best way to preserve knowledge, so write. What you've written now may be of use 100 years from now. It's important that you keep reading, and it's important that you keep creating. That's what's going to help the future.
Thank you so much for these beautiful words, sir. And I'm sure so many will inspire by these talks, and they'll start reading, they'll start writing. Even whenever I talk to people, even I say that you create a history when you are writing a book, because you'll be there somewhere in the library or bookstores or at somebody's bookshelf forever. Absolutely. By writing a book. So thank you so much, sir, for being here with us, and thank you so much, Kunjum, for giving us this beautiful space to talk on books. And thank you. Keep watching and keep reading, and I'm sure you're gonna love this Song of the Trinity. So book is available at.
And when you figure out why it is called the Song of the Trinity, you're going to have more fun.
True.
That I promise.
True. It's available at all the Kunjum bookstores and other stores as well, and at all the online. Platforms.
And on Amazon, yeah.
Yeah, Amazon, especially Amazon.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.